as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And Jesus answering said unto him, See thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us when shall...
Hello there, welcome to Lime Online Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the Gospel of Mark. We just had the tail end of chapter 12 to talk a little bit about. There's not a whole lot I need to say about it, but we're going to do that anyways. We'll just start reading right here where we're going to pick up. We'd already discussed other stuff. Remember, Jesus is in the temple teaching. People stopped asking him questions, and he started just telling them what he wanted to say. And he aimed his words directly at the leadership and the old wineskins, so to speak. And it's funny, don't think it's any different today. All those structures operate in exactly the same way. They're corruptible. Inherently, they are immovable. They become calcified. They're just no use. Well, there's a use to it. We have to fight it. Anyways, all right, chapter 12, verse 41. And Jesus sat over against the treasury and beheld how the people cast money into the treasury, and many that were rich cast in much. And there came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 mites, which make a farthing. And he called unto him his disciples, and saith unto them, Verily I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast more in than all they which have cast into the treasury. For all they did cast in of their abundance, but she of her want did cast in all that she had, even all her living. And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And Jesus answering said unto him, See thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? And Jesus answering them began to say, Take heed, lest any man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be. But the end shall not be yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. But take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. And the gospel must first be published among all nations. And when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what you will speak. I get, because I sing it, I take the ye out of there, and when I sing it, it's making me read it wrong. But when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate, but whatsoever shall be given you in that hour, that speak ye. For it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, Let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains, and let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. And then, if any man shall say to you, Lo, here is Christ, or Lo, he is there, believe him not. For false Christs and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take ye heed. Behold, I have foretold you all things. But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. And then shall he send his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So ye in like manner, when you shall see these things come to pass, know that it is nigh, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass, till all these things be done. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. And then we come to the final, the feast of Passover. I saw a connection between the fig tree here and the fig tree previously. I saw one. I realized. I'll tell you right now my thought on that. As he cursed that fig tree, because it's like he says, well, I guess I got to lay some groundwork here. When you see these things coming to pass, what things? There's some really interesting statements that Jesus makes in this whole thing. There's a passage I've memorized. I can sing the song without looking at the music. It's one of the ones that this is one of my songs I can pull out of my hat anytime I please. At least last time I checked, right? But it's one of the ones I like to keep at the ready. It's always been one of my favorite passages. I think it was like the third song I attempted to write. Yeah, I stole the intro is actually lifted. I was going to write the testimony of St. Stephen, a song I never finished writing. But it starts off exactly as, Men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. The God of glory appeared unto Father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he came to Haran, whatever. So anyways, there are a lot of statements in this passage where he's like, what I'm pointing towards is the time. You understand that the events of AD 70 are very important to this passage because Jesus is taught. He starts off by saying, not one stone will be left upon another. And you can't just ignore the fact that in AD 70 they destroyed the temple. I mean, because that's what they were marveling at. I know the Western Wall still stands. And my old teacher used to make a big point about that and saying, like, well, there's still part of it. Well, the platform on which the temple stood is still there. That's what that Western Wall is. It's not really any part of the temple. And, and he sort of declared that there was some sort of prophecy not yet fulfilled in that Western Wall should be sand. Like there should be an obliteration of that of that area. He used to say literally that the Temple Mount was going to get a fresh coating of sand when Jesus returns. That's how he believes that it's going to be destroyed, the final remnants. And I've said there is a temple to God. The Muslims claim that their God is the same God. I know a former Muslim who believes that that's the Antichrist, okay, and that the whole Islamic movement is that. And it's certainly not pro-Christ, that's for sure. And I certainly I admire the work of the apologists. I know one of whom is a friend, who really focus and specialize in answering the challenge to Christianity that comes from Islam. That's not my, I'm more focused inwardly on Christians. Because strong Christians will, you can go off and specialize. I don't teach you. I'm a generalist, as you may guess. I'm a generalist. So we were going to make a few comments about this. Well, the timing. All right, the fig tree. I was going to say about that. Well, the connection I see on the fig tree is that like he cursed that fig. He came there and he found leaves, but it wasn't the time of figs. But then he says, when you see leaves, and it reminded me of what it says, blessed is that servant whom his Lord shall find so doing, that when he comes, he shall make him Lord over all he has. You know what I mean? Because it was his critique of what those who had been lent the vineyard had gotten up to, that they had been crucifying the prophets, and so he came there and he found the leaves and the figs. He found the leaves and the tree. It was time, when you see the leaves coming, it's near the time of summer. It's near that time when the things are supposed to happen, when the prophecy is supposed to be fulfilled, right? And what is Jesus looking for when it gets to be that time? He wants fruit, even when it isn't time. He demands fruit out of season all the time. That's the way I see it. It's like, no, he's like, I am come to send fire on the world. What will I do if I find it already be kindled? He's suggesting something. He suggests we get up off of our keisters and do things as Christians to change the world and to prepare the way for the Lord. He wants fruit on that tree when it has leaves, even if it's not the time. Yeah, there's early figs. As a fig tree casteth her untimely. I don't know how it all works together, but I see a connection. That's all I'm saying. When their branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, know that summer is near. It's getting time to be close. When you start seeing the things he described happening, because AD 70 was an end of the world. An end of a world, an end, just like when the other temple was destroyed. There was a king of Babylon. There was all these symbolic things that apply at that situation and in the current situation and in the future. Whenever you come up an antichrist-like situation, it's going to fall into the same pattern. That's why he's talking simultaneously about AD 70, and yes, he's talking about the end of the world, because some of this stuff is nothing to do with the AD 70. No one saw Jesus coming in the clouds with great power and glory in AD 70. Maybe someone did, but it was only a vision. It wasn't the whole world like it's supposed to be. Every knee shall bow, every tongue confess. He's supposed to come with great power and glory. He wasn't speaking in a parable. All right, first about the poor widow. Is there anything to say? Well, it's just this comparison, right? That, hey, it's about, what does it mean to you? You know what I mean? We're supposed to, offer our bodies a living sacrifice to Christ. That's a pretty high bar, really. I used to think of that just in the sense of, like, I remember as a teenager when we would talk about this in the community college, like, youth group, it didn't really sink down into my ears as what that really entails. That it even does go to literally offering yourself as a sacrifice, like Peter and James and John. Well, not John, I think, right? John wasn't murdered, I believe. I thought he died in prison. I don't remember. Did they eventually kill him even when he was old? I forget what that's traditions. It's like I don't have them memorized. I know that there was people had said that there was a misunderstanding that he should not die until the Lord come, but it had not said that. It said, what if I will that he remain till I come? What's that to you? Follow me. So, a lot of times people have this idea of abundance and scarcity applies to many things. It's like I say, well, I've never committed adultery. Well, I'm faithful to my wife because I have a abundance of love towards her because she makes herself pleasing to me. I'm in a good situation, where I got someone that's easy to love, easy to look at. So it's like my boast in my faithfulness to my wife is not particularly impressive. Like, of course you're faithful to her. She's beautiful. She's sweet. She does things for you. So, though she appreciates my love and doesn't, rag it down like that, I'll rag it down and say like, well, no, it's easy. It's easy. It's easy when you're a millionaire to give $1,000, even though they don't like to. You notice these billionaires, like there was a fire in Hawaii, right? And this whole city burned down, this awful, terrible conflagration, and they still haven't exactly come clean about how many people died and what happened to the kids and all this. And I wanted to see more grieving parents, but there's stories that our whole family is just charred to the bone. And even hundreds, that's terrible if it isn't thousands. And all the shenanigans going on there. And then celebrities like Oprah and The Rock, they do a fundraiser. They want you to give money. They could easily, say, we're starting it off with $10 million, And it would be a drop in the bucket. $10 million for me, the equivalent percentage of giving would be, probably anything. Probably about $5. Like for me, I literally have no savings. I am in debt. I honestly have nothing to give except that which I live of. When I give things to people or I donate them, I'm giving of my very life existence. I'm like that. As far as that's where I live like she does. I live month to month. I always have. I've never been able to get ahead of that. I'm usually behind it, where, like I said, I've looked at a lot of foreclosure notices over the years. Okay. I don't make that a brag. And people say like, well, if you're a man of God, you'd be better. It's like, no, I made choices and sacrifices. I have a certain level of income and then emergencies come up and it's difficult, but I made it. It's like, it's not impossible. I mean, I tell you what, I don't necessarily wish it on anyone, but I do wish people to be encouraged that you can do it, you can make it. Anyways, so when they talk about this, I get it. I have to measure from some other place because I like the widow. I don't have money, but I need to be able to look at myself and say like, okay, well, what is my abundance? A lot of my righteousness is not impressive because it comes easy. Just like out of the abundance of the gifts and calling, like Paul said, I would rather glory in my weaknesses and say like, these are the things where I struggle. And I think I generally do. I try to openly tout my my problems because there I can be instructive. There I can empathize because it's like I can even empathize on other things because I realize where my strengths and weaknesses are. And so it's not just about money. I mean, it may have been just about money, but we can apply that truth across many domains of abundance and scarcity. Remember when remember the sacrifice you make, how much are you really giving up? Make sure you understand that because don't expect great things from God when what you're giving to God is not your best and not your most. It's just like, oh, I got lots to spare. Okay. There you go. It's not, I'm just telling you, this is the way Jesus looks at it. And I'm not saying, again, just like with faith, Jesus here almost contradicts me because he's like, if you have faith and doubt not, and this doesn't contradict me at all, really. If you have faith and doubt not anything, and I'll say to you, but I say to you, even with a tiny bit of faith, and with maybe a lot of doubt next to that faith, you can still move a mountain. I'm not saying nothing's impossible to a doubter. A lot of things ain't going to happen for a doubter. But the Lord himself, when I receive things from him moments after doubting, with just a little bit of faith. Same thing with giving. A little is a good start. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard to be like the type of person who just sacrifices I'll go without and you have, who wants to do that? I mean, you might for your family, right? Or for a friend, someone you love, for strangers, like the Good Samaritan. Yeah, I'll pay for his thing. And, we assume the Samaritan had money. What if he was a poor Samaritan and paid for it? And he had to fast for a week because he didn't have any money for food. That's the kind of, and I'm not saying that's what you have to, well, that's what you aspire to. Yes. It's not where you're required to start. That's perfection of giving. You know what I mean? When you're just carving chunks of yourself off and handing it off. Not me. I don't need, I have the Lord. What else do I need? Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that cometh out of the mouth of God. I live by that. That's how you want to live. I don't live that hardcore, but I should. That's all I'm saying. Just like with a lot of things I say in the faith. Yeah, I want to have faith and doubt not, but I'm not going to BS you and say I do. I don't have faith and doubt not. I want to have faith and doubt not. Jesus rebuked me and make me have faith and doubt not. But that's the way it goes. We are moving towards a goal, not salvation. Salvation is Jesus. He works our salvation. Our goal is to become like him in him. That's his workmanship. I am an active participant in God's workmanship in me. I want to see that. It's like, imagine you have a project going on. You'd hire a contractor to come in and build something, right? What kind of customer are you going to be like? Hey, are you getting on that thing? Are you going to be here this week? Or how badly do you want it to be built? That's the question. Are you going to make the calls? Are you going to stay on them to ensure? That's the point. Is like God is kind of like a contractor that's got other things to do. He's got all the time in the world for you. But if you're not paying attention to it, he's not necessarily going to pay attention to it. I mean, and then if that goes on long enough, he may have to get your attention if you're one of his, because that's what ultimately makes you get saved, is you are his chosen. That's why there's all this stuff like, there would be nobody saved, man. Nobody. None of you have what it takes. Nobody, except for the elect. It's not because they're elite. Don't confuse elect with elite. Elect is all of us. Now, some of us, elite is like someone who is like a prophet or an apostle. There are such things, but again, he that will be greatest among you must be your servant. These are elite servants. But elect is all believers. We are chosen by God for salvation, created in Christ Jesus unto good works. Salvation is by faith, by grace through faith, because it is of him. That's why, otherwise, this whole demonstration of no one would be saved otherwise would make, what's the point? Why go to that at length to show that even the most faithful among us would otherwise fail? Okay, so look at the buildings, marveling at them. And he says, hey, you see this? There's not going to be one stone upon another that's not going to be thrown down. This is all going away. And then, of course, now this is something they said that they understood what he was talking about. And they're saying, we'd like to get him to talk more about this. What about what's the sign? When is this going to be? And, there's Mark 13, Matthew 24, Luke 21. They're all somewhat similar, except Luke 21 takes place in a different place. So it's obviously a different account. Matthew, and it's feasible that Jesus may have, like I said, you don't have to get this hardcore, concrete about it. Being like, well, He actually spoke on 3 occasions, and it could be on 2. I do think there are at least 2 occasions where he uttered things. The Luke one is significantly different, and like I said, in a different, I believe, different location, right? Let me just, that's a fact I don't want to get wrong, even though I consider that the sort of fact I would get wrong. He is in the treasury, and then the same things happen. Yeah, and then he doesn't leave the it's while he's still in the treasury he says this. And then and the other one is on the Mount of Olives, both Matthew 24 and Mark 13. So I would believe that my tendency to think would be that Matthew 24 and 13 were the same event. Mark giving a briefer account of what was said, or even perhaps that the thing was repeated on more, like twice there. It would not seem unusual for him to say the same teaching twice, and for it to be, and like I said, I don't think there were any stenographers sitting there. So this is the kind of thing the Holy Spirit had to bring to the remembrance of the authors of the gospel. That you have to think of it as, because that's how I would understand it to be written, is the Holy Spirit brings it to their remembrance. That Jesus said this, maybe confirming with other, but did Jesus not say this? It's like, yes, this is just the sort of thing Jesus said. This is why, that's how he said it all the time. Anyway, so his first warning, they want to, what's the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled? Well, now they presented him with an interesting question, because he's referring to AD 70, but also he's giving them more information than they actually asked for, because they want to know what's happening in the near future. Wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? And they think this may have something to do with it. Well, the temple is going to be destroyed. Tell me about this. What's going on here? He had said destroy this temple in another place, not in the Gospel of Mark. Maybe later on he does. But destroy this temple and I will rebuild it in 3 days. Speaking of the temple of his body. And which is one of the accusations against him, that Jesus had talked about the temple being destroyed on more than one way. So this is the destruction of temples is something that has come up. And also, the temple that is destroyed, there is going to be more history there yet after that. So it's not the end of the world yet. He knows they want to know about that coming into the kingdom. But he's also talking about the destruction of the temple in AD 70 and the end of Israel as any kind of coherent Jewish state there. There were of course, there have been and always have been Jews who remain in that area from the time, the diaspora is never 100%. There are still a few living in the area and close by and moving back and all that, but not since that time when the Romans threw them out. Take heed lest any man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Now, later on it talks about false Christs and false prophets rising, but that's not how I read this passage. This is reflexive. Jesus is saying that they will say that I, Jesus, am the Christ. They're going to affirm me and deceive people. And that's a very important thing you understand, because people will, in the name of Jesus, deceive people. This is hard for some people to understand. That's why they become gullible and they're taken in by charlatans, like are described in chapter 12. They love to go in long robes. They love the chief seats in the synagogues. Or, it's maybe not long robes. They love to wear that expensive 3-piece suit or whatever. To be regarded as a man of God, to be respected as that. I don't have, the people I encounter in daily life don't know that about me, and I don't try to flaunt it to them in any way, shape, or form that I am aware of. Not, I do try to, I do want to let my light so shine before men, right? But also to not sound a trumpet before you. It's a very delicate balance there, Don't sound a trumpet before you, and don't put your candle under a bushel. There's it's a little bit it's a mixture of humility and also, what's the word? The boldness. What's the word I want to use? We're enthusiastic about the things of God. And so we want to let that light shine, because it's a wonderful, glorious thing that we It is the reason of the hope that lies in us. So I mean, I want people to say, like, one thing that people, I think they are around town or whatever, but people see me usually not. I try not to. When I was young, I exuded this menacing air, and sometimes I still do, because I can create like this, this like area, like this. Just this. I come in like a black cloud, if I want to. You know what I mean? But I try to be more of a smiling, if black cloud. With a smiling face on it, because I do have joy in my heart. I do have much to rejoice over, and I have much hope in myself. So I want people to see someone who looks like they're lit up with the light of Christ. I'll look around. When I go through town, I'll look up and I'll see like some old lady, and she's smiling, looking at me, and I'm like, it's probably because I look like an exceedingly pleasant individual. Like there's someone who's, and I try to walk with a little spring in my step, even when my feet hurt. I laugh because it's true. Sometimes I am too tired to keep that up, and I do just drag myself through the world. I'm just saying, I'm not always like that, but I definitely try to be. I try to be. I can't always give it all, but I try to give more than the least I can do, okay, in everything. We want to do, I never read the book, but I like the title, My Utmost for His Highest. I can tell exactly what it's all about I'm like, yes, I get it. I can, it's got to be sounds like a really great exhortation, right? To edify. So there are people who come in the name of Jesus as deceivers. There aren't a lot of people come, if you take it the other way and say, like, they come saying, I'm Christ, I'm the Messiah. Yeah, there's that too. And that's covered. But it's much more essential that you beware of false brethren. Not just false, Jesuses. That's pretty easy. That's not totally easy. I mean, right? Ultimately, it is a false Christ we're watching out for. The Antichrist Antichrist really means not against Christ, not necessarily, though it does mean that. It can certainly be construed to mean that. Arnold Murray used to say, no, it means instead of Christ. Yes, in the sense of against, like over against, instead of, in the place of, that's what it means. And it is also as opposed to Christ. There's a opposition, yes, not necessarily, but he is the one who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. It's from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That is the Antichrist writ large. But we're talking about anti-Christians. There's a lot of, because there aren't a lot of false messiahs. Not a lot, really. I mean, you could say there's many in the long haul. How many do you encounter in a week? How many, turn on the TV. Find me 2 false messiahs. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like I know there are false messiahs out there. I remember we used to go to visit a friend in Joliet and have Bible studies, and they showed me, it was either on TV, like public access. There was like basically this cult of people who they believed their leader was Jesus Christ returned, and they called him the Yod-Heh Vav-Heh. They literally said the letters. It's like our Yod-Heh Vav-Heh needs to be let out of prison or whatever. I don't whatever. But YHVH, they wouldn't pronounce it like a word. They would literally say the letters phonetically like that. That's not even phonetically. That's just, they would just say the names of the letters. It's like saying my name is P-A-U-L. 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 And so that's how he taught them to refer to him. And he's a God. They literally said, they were saying, Exodus, let our God go. Like that was the theme of this study. So yeah, there are false messiahs out there. Are they common? No. What about false Christians? What about false pastors, false teachers? Oh, those are many. Many. Yes. False brethren, entering another way. That's what Jesus is warning about here. Many come, because here's the thing. This is the giveaway. They come in his name. You don't come in the name of Jesus and then say, by the way, I come in the name of Jesus. By the way, I'm him. No, that's not how it works. That literally can't work that way. Jesus doesn't come in his own name. He comes in the name of the Father. Another will come in his own name. In him you will receive. But he's not coming in the name of Jesus. He's coming in his own name as the Messiah. Not as Jesus. I mean, I suppose it could be he wants us to call this is the new Jesus. It's like, but I mean, not as our risen Lord. Well, I remember Arnold Maurice used to say he might even have marks in his hands. Somehow I doubt that. Here's why. I used to think that the false Messiah would have to be almost like a replica of Jesus. Like it would look just like him, be almost indistinguishable. Right? But I think I overestimated our ability to resist. Because after seeing the pandemic and how readily people went along with something so that you could figure out was wrong, and like I said, the people who were brainwashed don't bother me as much as the people who knew better but just went along with it anyways. That scares me. You people scare me the most, okay? Because you should be helping, not putting your tail between your legs and helping the bad guys. That's not good. We need you on this side of the thing, on the side that stands up. Anyways, they're probably not going to get that if it's the end time. If it's the end times, we're not going to get that. We will be hoping with a little help, right? There's going to be a little bit, but many will cling to them with flatteries. There's going to be a lot of times where you think it's help, but it's not. No. So, what was I getting at? Whatever. The false messiahs are not, there's a false messiah. He's going to exalt himself above all that is God that is worshipped. And that's what's going to put the separation between the nominal believers and the true believers. Those who really have faith and are saved by grace are not going to be deceived. I don't think any true believer, it's possible for them to deceive. You know why? Because a true believer is chosen by God. A true believer is elect of God. Elect means selected. It doesn't mean, now sometimes we think of elect as being elite because we would say, well, we want to create an elite force, so we'll select people. We'll elect this guy. We'll choose this one. We'll choose that one. And chosen men making up an elite force is like, that's the mentality thing. And we have an election to elect the president. We would like to think that that person is the best among us. But he is. I don't, not since, a couple times I think, George Washington might have been the best of his generation, okay? But there's a few, not many of those dudes really rise to that level of the best among us. Not many. Woo. And they have to be the best of the best or the very best, but I mean among the best. You want top men, right? Top men. So I'd like to I don't really want to debate David Wood, but he did a video where he was talking about Islam and whatever and women. And the intelligence, but he conflates average intelligence with top. He didn't really compare top intelligence, because though men and women are of the same average intelligence, the curve is more flat, and we have more people at the tail ends. I mean, there are more male geniuses and more male sub-geniuses, okay, whatever you want to call it, than women do. There are fewer very low intelligence females and fewer extremely high intelligence females, just at the ends of the curve. So your likelihood, if you want to pick the best and brightest for your leaders, there's going to be a small percentage of women. It's not going to be 50-50. If you have 50-50 in your leadership, you have mediocrity. That's a sign of mediocrity if half your leaders are women. Now some women may not like that, but that's the truth. It's a sign of mediocrity. That's why in the Bible, there are a few women who rise to leadership. Deborah, women can do it. Oh, yeah, you bet. They can do it, and they can do it quite well. It's just a rare woman because they're just not equipped. They just don't come out that high-powered as often, And we don't want average. Here's the thing. I love average people, especially in the gospel, and even sub-average, because that's what the gospel is all about. It's accessible to all. Leadership, though, requires certain gifts, or we hope so. I mean, we see what a disaster when we have an ungifted. I mean, our current president is someone who's ungifted, untalented. His whole career, he's a plagiarist, a liar, just a philanderer, influence peddler. All these things are going to come out pretty soon. And he's done. I don't think he's going to stand for re-election. honestly. But someone like that should never rise to power. That's insane. And it's the fact that the government seems to be all too pleased to have a puppet who's barely able to, who's not really leading this country, who is just a figurehead. The fact that they're pleased with that is disgusting. We don't even have a leader. I mean, there's a sort of leadership there, but it's like this guy is not in command. I mean, he may technically be in command, but it's like, I mean, here's the thing. The last leader wasn't in command either. Remember, he'd tell his generals to, like, take the troops out. And stuff. No, and they wouldn't. They'd lie about it. They'd lie to the president. You know? That means if you get someone in there who wants to do good, he's not even going to be able to do anything. At least it's going to be a fight in hell and all the rest. But, okay. Whatever. Certain gifts are required. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be earthquakes in diverse places. There shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginning of sorrows. Oh, yeah. When you shall hear wars and rumors of wars. People always think the wars and rumors of wars are the signs of the end times. But Jesus is saying right here that war is really nothing to be... That's just something that happens all the time. You're going to hear wars and rumors of wars. Don't be troubled. For such things just need to be. But the end is not yet. That's no sign. So when people say, whether it's they try to say, increasing wars or increasing earthquakes. There is no increasing earthquake phenomenon just yet. They've been saying that since I was a kid. The false prophets on TV, on Christian television have been saying, just natural disasters are getting more and more frequent. And if I was to subscribe to that theory and to saying it's like birth, I'm not disagreeing that, that's the thing when it says these are the beginning of sorrows in verse 8, right? And I think many come in the name of Christ and they deceive people. They come in the name of Christ promising to give them Christ and they don't turn them into Christians. You know what I mean? It's this deceit. This false package. I'm trying to get my Greek up here. Here we go. Oh, I love this chapter. What happened? Study mode. Okay. All right. We want to look at sorrows. I don't remember the... bring it on the screen here. Whatever. There it is. The beginning of sorrows. Odin. It is a feminine noun meaning the birth pang. The pang of childbirth. Acute pain, severe agony, a snare. Odin properly. The pain of childbirth, travail. Figuratively, the pain necessary to open up or introduce something new. Interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to read that. There we go. So figuratively, that means this is literally what it means. Literally means birth pains. And also it is a figurative thing, the pain necessary to bring something in new or more. Now, if you've ever experienced birth, I've experienced it not firsthand, but secondhand. I was present at 8 births precisely. I've been to 8, seen them go different ways. But one thing everyone who knows, who's been around a woman giving birth, knows that the contractions start off far apart and they get closer and closer together, right? And so people use this analogy. I'm not saying it's wrong. I definitely think there's something to it, right? But we should be a bit skeptical because, again, it leads to this sort of confirmation bias where every time someone sees an earthquake, they think it's getting more and more frequent. When last I checked, and it's been a little while, it's been a couple of years, but I remember recently, within the past few years, hearing once again that we are not seeing, hurricanes are not increasing in their frequency or their severity, not on a historical basis. Earthquakes are not, natural disasters are not, now, not when they talk about like the Lahaina fires I was talking about in Hawaii. That thing, there's a reason why that's a man-made disaster. That we planted foreign grasses that would never grow in Hawaii, they dry out, and then you have wildfires. And a lot of these wildfires in California and other parts of the country are due to poor land management. And they allow the buildup of all this dry vegetative material in these dry climates, and they end up having wildfires. And it's due to human activity. So that's not a natural disaster, those things. Human-made disasters are on the increase, though. I will say that. Man-made disaster. We just had a massive man-made disaster called the coronavirus pandemic. And that was a man-made disaster. Man-made disaster. Even if it wasn't a man-made virus, it was man-made because man was doing something he shouldn't have. Poking around in caves. Whatever. I mean, it was man-made. I mean, come on. It was ours, too. We sent our weapon to China, and then it got out. Oops! I think we left the jar unscrewed is what happened. And that was how our government tried to take out its own president. That's what I've suspected since it started. And I don't know, I have any evidence for that, but that's my crazy conspiracy theory. Like I said, take that with a grain of salt because I do. But like that conspiracy theory is back in my mind. I'm like, someday I want to know if that's true. Because we sent our gain of function research from North Carolina up over to China. And there was stuff back and forth there, And I'll tell you what, both the Chinese and our government disliked the last president. And they didn't have dirt on him the way they've got dirt on old Joe. And he's compromised. They've paid him millions of dollars, and they have all the receipts. They could they could get him in jail. I don't, if there was a just world, that guy would never be a free man again. We have to start punishing leaders. We can't do for doing things that are patently illegal or evil. We can't do, like what we did in Ukraine. There's another man-made disaster, the Ukraine war. Hundreds of thousands of young men dead. They figure there's like 500,000 people dead on the field out there. Satellites, right? But there's documented in hospitals, I think it was like 40,000 people with injured with missing limbs. That's when they take that ratio, like to World War, comparing it to the ratio of wounded casualties to dead casualties from World War II and other wars. If you just take the ratio that always comes up in war, historically, that means that the normal battle casualty ratio would mean that about 500,000 people have died. And that's Billy, as our lovely senator, the bloodthirsty vampire, Lindsey Graham says, best money ever spent. We're killing Russians. Why are we killing Russians? Why am I killing Russians and using the blood of Ukrainians to do so? I mean, if I have to, you mean I have to kill 500,000 Ukrainians to kill just 100,000 Russians? And I didn't want any dead Russians myself. I have friends that are Russians. This whole hatred for Russia. It's like, aren't those the people we used to call Slavs because we used to enslave them? Are we not enslaving the Slavs again to fight each other? Are the Ukrainians not our slave army being conscripted to fight for America? Cursing is rising to my lips. Cursing is rising to my lips. Wars and rumors of wars. This isn't the end, but it's a disaster. We are so guilty. I tell you what, man, the chickens are coming home to roost, folks. Sorry, we didn't turn back in time. Judgment of God is coming. America's coming down to its knees. Watch and see. I'm not saying it could be a country or anything, but it's like, it's time to get off our high horse, really. We weren't worthy to be emperors of the world, you know? Nope. Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to happen, but that's not the end. There are a lot of history has to happen. Things are going to, like I said, I don't know if this is the end times. It doesn't feel like the end times to me, not yet. Even though, I've all my, since when they were having the Y2K craze and people, I remember people were excited that Jesus might return. And I looked into that and I'm like, I remember in 1996 telling my wife, because we were married just a year at the time, I'm like, it's funny because this is the 2000th anniversary. This is the real year 2000. Well, if you accept that Jesus was born in 4 BC, they give 2 BC, 4 BC. I've even seen 6 BC. But it's somewhere around 1996. Somewhere in there, right? That's the real year 2000. That means 2,000 years from his leaving the earth, from his ascension, is actually in the year 2027 or so, somewhere in there. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. We're in an interesting time. Believe me, the year 1000 was really interesting. The things that, not that specific year, but around that time, that was like the Black Plague and people were going around flagellating. I mean, it was crazy times. So we are living in interesting times. Nation, there will be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. Now, let me tell you something. If this is the beginnings of birth pains, well, then I have something else to say about that. I've witnessed my wife go into labor many times. I've also experienced what is called false labor, where she has a few pains, but no baby. It feels just like labor. Just, there's a little, they call them, I forgot what it's called. I'm not sure if these are the Braxton Hicks contractions, if that's what they're called, or if those are the ones later. I forget. It's been 8 years since I had a baby with my wife. So, and the grandchild, I was not involved. Wonderful. The baby just shows up. I didn't have to go to, I hate births. Did I ever say that? I've been to 8 births and I hated every one of them. I hate watching my wife give birth. No, because it's so stressful. It's so stressful. The baby coming out, it's dangerous for the woman. It's dangerous for the baby. We've had stuff happen I've had kids come out the wrong way, upside down. And of course, my first son being in the hospital after 2 weeks and then at 7 months and nearly dying on multiple occasions scarred me for life. And so I've always been like this really scarred, overly cautious parent that I have to consciously try to tell myself to just ease up, and stuff like that. It's mostly from my emotions. I've tried not to let it affect my parenting, though in some ways it's impossible. The beginnings of sorrows can be uncertain. And so when you see famines and troubles and a whole cluster maybe of bad stuff going on, understand that even though that was a real big contraction, it might not mean that the baby's coming. Now, when the baby's coming, like someone once asked me, they were asking whether the coronavirus, they thought that the vaccine for the COVID shot was going to be this terrible thing. That's what they thought. And it was going to kill, according to them, because I had told them how in the book of Revelation, because they thought this could be some sort of trumpet or sign. And I was like, well, I'm pretty skeptical about that. That doesn't make sense to me. But there is something that, whatever it is that leads into the tribulation, parts of the sign. One of the things it says is the third part of men will be slain, or at least there's some, indication that that'll be so. A third of the earth's population is going to die during the tribulation, at least. And, or so it seems, that's one interpretation. And so I was saying, like, well, if this really was one of, it would go on, we would go on to see those results. I'm like, I can't look at it now and say like, well, yeah, it's obviously, the third trumpet or something, and I still don't think it's any kind of trumpet, but it's definitely something evil. Definitely something evil. Because it's still going by this emergency use authorization. It's safe for emergency use. It's arguable whether we're in an emergency or whether we ever were. in an emergency. Not for all, everyone, for a lot of people, it wasn't no emergency. It was emergency for a lot of sick, old people. So once again, we've passed that, but we're still living in troublesome times. Could it be a precursor to the trip? No, anything could be a precursor to the end times, because the end times are a thing unto themselves. You have to see the events happen. I want to see the first trumpet, the second trumpet, the third trumpet. There's going to be some event that I can line up with that's going to be a signal to me, because God doesn't do anything except he shows his prophets. I am a faithful. I've been following him. I've been faithful. He's going to show me. I know he's going to show me what he's doing. If he was doing something, he'd show me, and he'd show you too. If you don't need me. I'm not saying you need me like I'm the special one who knows. He's going to show us. We have oil in our lamps. We can just lift them up and look. That's all it takes. We're all slumbering and sleeping in one respect, like the 10 virgins, right? And that's something that's one of the things Jesus talked about in Matthew 25 in connection with this same prophetic, what do I want to call it? It's not quite a diatribe. It's more of a prophetic explanation, whatever. The thing you got to watch out for is not, people want to look out for what wars and natural disasters and that none of that is a sign. It's just like, here's the thing. You want to know, well, how am I going to know it's the end times? I'm going to tell you the same thing that God showed Elijah. The wind came and the rushing and all these big signs. Earthquakes, wars, big deal. The Lord isn't in it. There's a little voice that will tell you. He just will speak it to you. That's all. You don't need a big... You walk with him, he'll talk with you. Just settle it in your mind. Be trusting, have faith. Know that, because a lot of times the Lord doesn't speak to you until he really needs to. I learned that in a dream. You're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. Don't be troubled. The end is not going to be yet. Nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There should be earthquakes all over the place. There's going to be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of labor. Yeah, there's going to be that stuff too. But that's like the beginning of labor. It's uncertain and you can't use it for a sign. How do you know it is really the real deal? Well, because it keeps going and then it progresses. That's what I said. I said when they asked about the vaccine, I'm like, well, then I would expect it to progress to the other stuff. Because we're not just going to have like, oh, it was the pandemic. That's the end times. What? That doesn't make sense. No. And then obviously it wasn't. Because that was 3 years ago. The tribulation is only 3.5 years. Right? This is not, like I said, if this is the tribulation, I'm really disappointed. And I am really disappointed, especially because, like I said, we know when Antichrist appears in this false Messiah, I don't care if he tells everybody he's Jack Handy. Once he starts doing miracles and stuff, once the whole world, the peer pressure of everyone worshiping this thing and him bringing in a system where everyone has to be part of it. If you want to buy or sell, we already see how this is working. They're trying to bring in a technology, but you don't even really need technology. All you need is humans to enforce it. We don't have to have a censorship system if every neighbor man will snitch on his neighbor. You don't need to have cameras everywhere if you have just human beings willing to not tell the truth. And in that case, this is what you really got to worry about. They're going to deliver you to councils. They're going to be beating you in their churches. And in the synagogues, when I do in my song, I say congregations. I should have left it at synagogues, but synagogue literally means synagoge. The word sin is the prefix for together. Let me just show you. I don't really need to do this because this is a word I am familiar with, but what are we on? Wow, we're in an hour. Councils is the Sanhedrin. That's a technical name for what they call it. Well, in the scriptures, they refer to the Sanhedrin, the council. But that, again, is, I believe, let me just check this. Sunedrion. Yeah, that's a Greek word. This isn't the Jews' word for their own council. This is just the Sanhedrin, we call it. But that's not what the Jews would have called it in Aramaic. Sorry, I'm sniffing so much. Oh, let me just mute here for a second. All right. Synedrion, and again, sune means together. So you get a sitting together, hence a council. Adrian means just like people who sit down together. Okay, but that's the literal meaning, but it means this they will take places where people are sitting and they're meeting. You know what the Sanhedrin is like? You ever see people testifying before Congress or testifying before a school council meeting? Those aren't people being delivered up. They often walk up there themselves to testify. But we're talking about something a little darker here. Where's my Synedrion and synagogue? Again, you have the soon, the together prefix, agoge, which is bringing. So it's a bringing together, an assemblage, a synagogue. And I tell you what, as I've said before, the church is supposed to be ecclesia. Ek means out. Klesia comes from the idea of kaleo, to call. Called out, called forth. That's what we are supposed to be. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partaker of her sins. That church system is going down in flames. Get out of it. They are not going to lead you. What you're going to be, if you're, it's perfectly fine to be ensconced there. You have a few names, even in Sardis, that have not defiled their garments. But I'm saying get out of the mental space. Get out of the false doctrine space. The false expectations space where we're not really walking with Christ so that we're ready to face this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to just have, I accepted Jesus years ago and then my faith went stale. It doesn't make sense. My life in Christ needs to be moving ever onward, brighter and brighter to the perfect day. And that's the day when we come together, when it's ultimately, and I receive that which has been promised, the possession. The receipt of the purchased possession. It's already done, but I don't have it yet. Now we're going to wrap up here. You're going to be beaten. You're going to be brought before rulers and kings, before group gatherings like that. It's not necessarily Jewish in nature. It would be for Jews. For Jews, they would be brought before the Jewish councils. For me, it's going to be an American thing. I'm not living on the other side of the planet. I always figure my ministry is right where I am. That's why I look at myself. I'm from a very small region. I'm in one of the smallest counties in Illinois. That's not where I'm from, but that's where I am. That's where I've gone. That's where the Lord led me. And so, I've seen my ministry on the scale of where I am in life. It's like, well, there's not a lot of people for me to minister to. It's all right. Because I don't need to serve everybody. I just need to serve. Everybody needs to be, we all need to serve and we need to be served. We need to have people lead us and teach us. If people are receiving that, then I'm content. I don't think, I'm not some special prophet. The Lord has his army. That's what Elijah also learned, that it's not just him. The Lord had 7,000 that had not bowed the knee to Baal. He reserved to himself. You're not alone. You just feel alone. I'm not alone. I just feel alone. My peers are all out there doing their work. My brothers. Okay, and then what is the purpose? It's to testify. It's to make a testimony against them. Testimony is marturion. Well, or martus. I'm not a Greek scholar, but I've been exposed to it for a long time, so I have some. Okay, there we go. I just want to make sure that's right before I know. Now, I don't want to. Testimony against. Okay, I thought we were gonna. Yeah, it is marturion. Testimony, yeah, marturion. I hit it on the nail on the head. It's marturion. Oh, I didn't have it over there, but there you go. You see, marturion. A testimony, a witness. We get the word martyr from marturion. Martyr did not mean someone who gets killed for telling the truth, but rather it just meant someone who bears witness. But often that connotation gets built in once enough people bear witness and we see what happens. So, the gospel must be published among all nations. And really, this little section doesn't close up here. We're still in the same idea here through verse 11 and verse 12. And really verse 13. And then he shifts gears. But when you should see the abomination of desolation. See, everything he said up to this point, it is fairly accurate to what happens in AD 70. But there is no abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not. That's not... Why, I suppose they did come in and defile the temple before they destroyed it. So that also happened. But that also will happen yet again, and we know the nature of that by what we read in other passages in the New Testament. We'll talk about that in more detail tomorrow. We'll really get into the Antichrist aspect, the abomination of desolation. We just covered Daniel. And, okay, so we're going to pick it up at verse 10, because I didn't really say anything about that. This is one of the things, and I will in closing, this is one, we'll say 11, right? Because we'll cover this as we close. That part of what people say is that we need to preach the gospel to every nation. It's one of the signs of the end. And I think that's accurate. This is one of the things he says. The gospel must first be published among all nations. Now, the gospel was not published among all nations before AD 70 that I know of. But again, that depends on us interpreting his words very literally. It says, you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. Did he mean literally every single man? I was going to say, but we're getting to that tomorrow. Well, no. Does he mean literally all nations? Maybe not. It might have meant that just the gospel has to be preached to every nation in the sense of instead of just to the Jews, because he had been only preaching to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And he would send his apostles immediately to preach the gospel to the Gentile. That happened. And then by AD 70, all the Gentiles within reach had been reached, you could say, in that world of the Roman world, within that historical milieu, in that bubble of that empire, so to speak. It went out to all those nations, and then the end came, and the temple was destroyed. The Jews they lost their place. So I mean, like I said, there's a near fulfillment, the historical fulfillment, and that is a type of the ultimate. And the same patterns take shape, and that's how it works. But in another sense, look at here now, in the end of the world, if this is the end of the world, we have now just about done that almost literally among every nation. They talk about nations. They're like, well, what? They've gotten like really detailed on what a Christian considers a nation. They're like, well, we got to consider people groups. What is a nation? What is a language group? Can a nation be something as small as 20 people? We've got to reach out to everybody. So they've really tried to get missionaries out to every single little group of people that hasn't yet been touched by the gospel. And to what extent that's necessary, that may be just about done, if not done already. And so then we know that that barrier may be out of the way, or soon will be. It soon may be that no one on earth will have not heard at least the name of Jesus. But again, it doesn't have to be every person. He tells us to preach the gospel to every creature, but he doesn't demand that every ear hear the gospel. But among all nations, the gospel must be preached. And for my money, that's done. It's published. It may not have been received, like wholesale. Like, for example, the gospel is published to China. And now that the government had been, having different responses. There's a sanctioned church, right? There's unsanctioned. But the point is, wholesale, did the nation accept the gospel? No. But did some? Yeah. So was the gospel published there? Sure. Right? It's been published to China. It's there. Not available to everybody, but it's in the nation. Now, but what about the subnation? I mean, China is actually an empire. It's been built of actually different peoples. They've got the Uyghurs to the west, the Uyghur Muslims. Are they another nation? Probably. Have they had the gospel preached to them? I don't know. Probably. Maybe. Maybe not. So it's hard to weigh that for me. Anyways, it's something to consider. Like I said, it doesn't have to be literally true. It just has to be true enough. We're like, yeah, the nations have all had the gospel preached to them. Sure. I don't think that has. Like I said, I don't read it quite so literally because I don't see how you can. All men this, all men. Yeah, you'll be hated by everybody, sure, but not maybe my wife. Right? Not maybe. Now it does say, "Brother shall betray the brother to death," right? Anyways, pick up at verse 11 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again. You can see I don't even want to let go. I don't even want to stop, but we'll be back tomorrow. Until then. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.
And as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples said unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. And Jesus answering said unto him, See thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, Tell us, when shall these